We'll start our meeting. We do have quorum, and we have representatives of all official political parties recognized in the House of Commons. Welcome to our meeting, the 26th meeting of BOIE. We have a loaded agenda, so we will start quickly with the minutes of the previous meeting.
I'd like to approve the minutes arising from the previous meeting. Mr. Gerritsen, Madame de Bellefeuille, all in favor? Thank you. Alors, ça soulève la deuxième.
This now takes us to the second item on the agenda, business arising from previous meeting. Madame de Bellefeuille. Thank you. First of all, I would like us to talk about the dashboard on virtual committees. Mr. Chair, who should I turn to? Can I speak to Mr. MacDonald with your permission? It's very impressive, the results we have obtained so far on the dashboard. The performances, the increases. What impresses me is that we have successfully increased the number of minutes spoken in person and reduced the number of minutes spoken virtually. So this is progress that seems to help us attain a maximum level. I have a question for you, Mr. MacDonald. First of all, thank you to your team, because preparing such a dashboard, which is a self-evaluation tool, is demanding for the teams. But I had proposed that tool because it's the best to help us observe in a measurable way our attainment of our objectives. I know it's a lot of work, but I want to thank all members of your team. My question about the dashboard is that, to your knowledge, are there still many public servants working on the Hill or outside the Hill who are still appearing virtually? I'm trying to see how we can increase the number of testimonies in person. So do we have public servants working in the departments? Do you have that information? Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have that information, but we could find out and provide the information to BOIE during the next meeting or by letter. It's not something we look into specifically or generally. I know that efforts have been made by the liaison committee to encourage public servants to participate in person. A letter was sent out to the Privy Council office to share that information with all departments. But I do not have any statistics. We will find them and provide them to you. I have another question concerning dispersed mode interpretation. Have you arrived at any findings you want to share with us? Maybe you want to share that during another meeting, because that's part of the dashboard. Do you have any comments from interpretation services, from interpreters, from the technology team? Could you give us some information about what is currently happening? Thank you, Mr. Chair. We can provide you more information on that during the next meeting. But for now, we have found that, well, I think that there were consultations with the offices of the whips of all parties. In January, we had discussions. We had some changes not to the system. We have kept the same system, the same interpreters working in dispersed mode. But we have changed the way those resources are assigned to committees. I'm trying to be more flexible to ensure more availability of resources to support committees in a more flexible manner. since we resumed in January. Have you compared data when it comes to work incidents? For example, the integration of the dispersed mode interpretation, has this reduced the incidents reported by interpreters? I think Mr. Odidi has more information on that. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. The pilot project is going very well in our view. Technologically, we haven't observed any accidents. As Mr. McDonald said, we have increased slots to maximize interpretation services and resources assigned and to provide committees with more flexibility. Technologically, we haven't had any problems. We had consultations with MPs and political parties and interpretation services. All has been positive. So we are paying attention to see if we can continue to improve the situation. Mr. Chair, one last question. I don't want to abuse your time so that the government, I don't want to cause a heart attack for the leader of the House. There's a lot of discussions we can have. My last question, are you going to compare data or could you provide this during the next meeting? I am very satisfied with the fact that since we resumed our work, since dispersed mode interpretation has been used, no committee meeting has been cancelled because of lack of resources, even though we've had extended hours. But I'm still concerned about finding out whether this way of working is improving the well-being of our interpreters. I know we've come to a moment where we have more resources to do our work. So if you are able to provide that data during another BOIE meeting, I'll appreciate it, to find out if this new mode of travel is causing any work incidents. Our desire, Mr. McDonald, you know it already, we want many interpreters and interpreters who are not falling sick or ill, and that's why I'm paying attention to that data. But once again, even when it comes to sound, I only use interpretation, and the sound is not always equal. The quality of interpretation is not always the same. I know that we are in a world where everyone is doing their best to provide the best results. I want to thank you. I want to thank your team. I want to thank the IT team for all the efforts that have been made and for your efforts made to improve the situation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Madame de Bellefeuille. It's all noted, and we'll try to come back with all that information during the next meetings. But we do appreciate all your comments and for having noted the progress that has been made so far. Mr. Julian, I would also like to extend my thanks. Progress has been made, and the health and safety of our House interpreters, without whom we cannot have democracy in the House, is very important. My only question has to do with the new interpreters, because every time that we come here, we would like to ask you the same questions. Are there other interpreters that have been recruited since the last time that you presented a report? Was there an exam to recruit other possible interpreters? And what do you foresee by the end of the year in terms of examinations for interpreters, and also concerning recruitment of interpreters? Because the more interpreters we have, the more issues of health and safety we have to deal with. But there's also the issue of number of interpreters. For many years, they have been understaffed, so we want to know what you intend to do. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I think these are questions that should be directed to the Translation Bureau. We will take note and find out the information that we can then provide to BOIE later on. Any other questions on this topic? Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Mr. Owidi.
LTVP Working Group, Deputy Speaker d'Entremont, please lead us away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As chair of the LTVP working group, I'm here today to update the board on progress on the Centre Block Rehabilitation Program and what the working group's been accomplished over the last 2 months. We've had numerous recommendations for the board's consideration and approval today. The working group has met several times to ensure key project elements are being reviewed in a timely manner, and so the board is providing key decisions in alignment with the project schedule. As an overall project update, the site work continues to progress very well. PSPC has confirmed the overall project health remains in line with the planned approved scope, cost, and schedule. The 50% design development package for Centre Block was submitted at the end of December by the design consultants and is in full review by our House of Commons project team. A review package submission on this project consists of over 2,000 drawings and over 10,000 pages in many supporting specifications and reports. The 50% design package for the Parliament Welcome Centre is expected in March. The working group has 4 more meetings scheduled this spring to be able to advise on many key decisions required on behalf of parliamentarians and to support the project progress. In that regards, from the latest detailed reviews from the working group has been involved in, the following recommendations are proposed for BOIE decisions to facilitate that work. Today, we're seeking endorsement on the following elements. Endorsement on the proposed accessibility improvements in the Memorial Chamber and Peace Tower. Endorsement for the proposed general layouts for lobbies and new lobby support space. Endorsement on the multimedia enablement strategy, including proposal to look at options for locations of simultaneous interpretation. Endorsement of the proposed circulation, excluding material handling. Endorsement of the proposed strategy for heritage rooms within Centre Block. A further update on dedicating space of the 4th floor central courtyard infill. And as well, we're seeking endorsement on the overall security approach for Centre Block Parliament Welcome Centre, but this will be briefed in camera at the end of my presentation. L'espace à haute valeur patrimoniale de
The high heritage space of the Memorial Chamber and the space inside is presenting some accessibility issues. These challenges are part of the original design to distinguish the significance of what the Memorial Chamber represents and the lives that are honored within. The materials that were used in the design are also significant in themselves, as they are from the battlefields upon which many Canadians fought and died during the First World War. The working group reviewed the various detailed proposals for improvement and the type of intervention that is required to provide greater accessibility, and believes a balanced approach is advisable. Respecting these are the proposals recommended to improve visitor experience that are achievable while respecting the historic and heritage architectural nature of the space. On the slide, you could see that many improvements are listed, such as improved access to ramps into the house, incorporation of braille on the handrails, tactile mapping to help with wayfinding, modification to the angle the books of remembrance are displayed for improved viewing, and handheld devices to assist viewing. On the central altar, accessibility challenges in the Peace Tower observation deck are also intrinsic to the original architectural design. PSPC has proposed a low-tech solution to enhance the viewing experience and overcome the stone windowsill obstruction. The introduction of periscopes, a creative solution, will enable various diverse users to the full viewing experience. Other amenities such as seating and a washroom will be added in nearby to improve universal accessibility as well. The working group recommends the proposed approach for accessibility improvements in these areas. for the board's consideration and endorsement. I hope you had the opportunity to look at the design that we presented.
Layouts for lobbies and new lobby support space. As you recall, the board gave direction to the Center Block project to respect the heritage architecture of the building while modernizing to meet the needs of the working parliament and endorse the interconnected two-floor lobby and lobby support area. The working group has consulted, as were the WIP's offices, including their lobby representatives, to gather requirements and feedback. An on-site visit of the lobbies to also facilitate further understanding the importance of the functioning of the lobbies. The working group has reviewed the proposed layouts. The lobby space has increased and is approximately 2.5 times larger than that of pre-closure Center Block. The lobbies will continue to have the same entrances off the chamber with improvements for accessibility. On the chamber level, the primary function of the WIPs and MP seatings are prioritized, with space for the page, desk, and supporting amenities such as technology and water services. Connected by internal stairs in each lobby, a lower floor offers further space and functions to support the work of members in the chamber, including the modern style PODs, ensuring some private work areas. Additional members' amenities are included in close proximity to the chamber at the lower level, such as a coat room, washrooms, meeting rooms, and a larger family room with upgraded features, including electrical requirements as per feedback received during MP consultations. The working group is satisfied that the proposed general layouts of the lobby space and lobby support space and believe the proposal takes into consideration members' needs supporting their work in the chamber. We recommend that the proposed general layouts be endorsed, noting that they offer flexibility with freestanding furniture that can support a variety of arrangements in the future. Stratégie d'habilitation multimédia.
Multimedia enablement strategy for Center Block. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic response to provisioning of innovative technologies to support Parliament, such as remote interpretation and e-voting, limited proof of concepts was undertaken. In 2021, the Translation Bureau and PSPC, in collaboration with the House of Commons, pursued a limited technical evaluation to determine if secure, encrypted, centralized, simultaneous interpretation would meet the Canadian parliamentary and global ISO standards for audio and video quality. Based on the successful security test for the Senate and House of Commons, the interpretation strategy warrants further testing to determine the reliability, scalability, operational impacts, and client user experience. The project is leveraging the success of the limited tech evaluation for centralized simultaneous interpretation as a probable solution for the space pressures within the Center Block and the Parliament Welcome Center. Space pressures to accommodate modern parliamentary functions, universal accessibility, as well as base building upgrades have required Parliament to prioritize space and investigate alternate approaches to deliver services to support parliamentarians. Given the technical security evaluation success for the House of Commons, designs for the Center Block and Parliament Welcome Center have been advanced using the centralized interpretation concept and not traditional simultaneous interpretation booths. Based on the success of the upcoming proof of concept, including the PCO security validation, centralized simultaneous interpretation, or CSI, is expected to deliver a modern environment custom designed to meet the needs of parliamentary interpreters. A centralized facility, as well as backup capabilities located in the center block underground services will be planned and implemented to align with the reopening of the center block. These spaces would continue to be secured by Parliamentary Protective Services. The working group supports this approach as it also offers good potential for efficiencies in terms of business continuity, support, and operations, as well as potential cost savings. We are recommending that BOIE endorse the centralized approach for simultaneous interpretation for center block and for the project to pursue options for the location within the parliamentary precinct.
A presentation on design progress was provided to the working group with the aim of explaining the circulation into and within the new Parliamentary Welcome Centre and the rehabilitated centre block. The circulation strategy includes visitors, business visitors, and parliamentarian routes. Reviewing the plans to understand how the building will function is quite complex. While the working group has the opportunity to engage, ask questions, and develop a detailed view of this circulation. We believe the proposed circulation is conducive to the functioning of Parliament with the balance of accessibility and security. We understand that the circulation paths will continue to develop as the design evolves, and will continue to monitor the progress to ensure it aligns with parliamentary operations. We are recommending that the proposed circulation strategy be endorsed by the board. Approbation des stratégies proposées.
Endorsement of the proposed strategies for heritage rooms within center block. There are 50 high heritage spaces in the center block which require conservation and modernization to support parliamentary operations and base building improvements. The board has directed that the heritage rooms must be protected and restored to reflect the importance of the history and the role they play to support Parliament. The working group has been briefed on the extensive analysis that has been undertaken under the project to understand the original design intent and heritage features for these rooms. Subsequently, this has informed the end state design vision and will guide design decisions wherever upgrades are required. The strategy for heritage rooms proposes 3 options for treatment types defined to guide the design of all individual heritage individual spaces within center block. 1. Preservation, restoration. Original design intent will be restored, particularly where there have been significant alterations and it has been eroded or concealed over time. An example of this design preservation strategy is the House of Commons Railway Committee Room. Number 2, sensitive reinterpretation, revealing and respecting the original design intent while balancing this with contemporary role of room or space and occupant expectations. An example of this design preservation strategy is the parliamentary dining room. 3, contemporary, reserved for spaces less sensitive to change, aims to create a legible but subtle and respectful distinction between what is historic and what is new through design of contemporary elements and features. An example of this design preservation strategy is a non-pavilion parliamentary office. With the approval of this strategy, the project team can start to apply the concept to the different heritage rooms and develop the design. They propose to bring forward each individual room with a developed design recommendation from the heritage experts for review and endorsement to ensure it meets the expectations of BOIE. The working group recommends endorsing the high-level proposed strategy for the treatment of heritage rooms in the center block and will update BOIE with the actual proposed design for the individual rooms as they are developed.
Cultural Practices Room. At the last LTVP, I provided the board, the update I provided to the board, you asked that the working group reconsider the use of the name of the dedicated shared space on the fourth floor of the central courtyard infill, which would be constructed with appropriate systems that could accommodate events where using smoke. The board did give approval for building design to progress in support of such a room, but felt further discussion was required on its name and future use. This week, I received a request from a member of the LTVP to revisit a few points on our decision. I will bring this back as soon as possible at our next. I know we're booked for the next few meetings, so we'll bring that back at the next one. En conclusion, avant de passer à huis clos.
So, in conclusion, before we go in camera for the last item, I would like to mention that the working group has been very engaged in a detailed review of the issues and proposed design for Center Block and the new Parliament Welcome Center. We continue to be confident that parliamentarians' requirements are being taken into account. We anticipate being able to update the board on the design through the spring as work progresses. I look forward to answering your questions. We will try to answer together with my two friends who are accompanying me, Jennifer Carrad and Susan Kurba. I should have introduced them at the beginning so that we can confirm the proposed endorsements. After that, we will have an in-camera discussion. Thank you very much, Mr. D'Entremont, for that very comprehensive, beautiful presentation. Do you have any comments before we go in camera? I see Mr. Chair, followed by Mr. McKinnon.
About where it's a strategy for heritage rooms in Center Block. I'm not sure which, page 27, I think, on the deck. It's a sensitive reinterpretation, revealing and respecting the original design intent, but balancing it with the contemporary role of the room or space and occupant expectations. Some of the rooms I'm thinking of, the larger committee rooms, I think it's the reading room and the railway room. Just want to clarify that some of that beautiful historic art and architecture, that's not what you're talking about. Okay.
Could you please speak more slowly?
Problem. In those historic rooms, like the reading room and the railway room, the larger committee rooms, there are just fantastic pieces of art, architecture and heraldic devices carved into stone. When you're talking about balancing with the contemporary role of the room, when we planned the move, the board at the time was very insistent that all that historic art and architecture will remain, because there's a tendency with architects and artists to update things in such a way with some of the awful modernist stuff. And I'd hate to think that we're going to lose any of those aspects of this kind of generational heritage that we have as this, that we're all looking forward to moving back into. We'd hate to arrive and then suddenly see that a modern lens has been added to some of the art, or a modern lens has been applied to some of the devices in and around the building. I just want some assurances that that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about updating things to more contemporary. I'm hoping that means just accommodating some of the modern technology, some of the needs of MPs that now carry Surface Pros and filming devices. So if you can just enlighten me a little bit on that point.
Sure, I'll start off with it. When it comes to those historical items, I mean, there's a number of these rooms that are historic in their nature, and looking back at the historical design of those rooms. I use the railway room for the example. Is that which part of that design, of the original design, or of the updates that happened over time? So we have to look back at what the original intent or design of those rooms would be. So trying to preserve everything as possibly we can. But what I'll do is I'll get Jennifer to answer it more specifically. But what is historic will stay historic, and what is sensitive will make sure that it stays as sensitive as possible, knowing that there's not a modern, but a more appropriate use of some of these items. And then the contemporary is kind of the new stuff that will happen, offices and that redevelopment as it goes. But Jennifer, maybe you can take on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Jennifer Garrett with Public Services and Procurement Canada, the new Acting Assistant Deputy Minister accountable for the work that we're doing on the long-term vision and plan for the precinct. Let me start by saying that I want to assure you that your concern is absolutely our intent is to protect the heritage. We've done extensive studies of the heritage of the building. We want to respect it when we understand the direction that came from the board on that matter, and we're taking that and applying it to all the Pearson special rooms and in fact the entire building. And those rooms, when they're ready to come forward in terms of their integrated design concepts, you'll be able to see them at some point in this forum as to how that heritage architecture is being maintained and those modernizations are being delicately put into the building. So at this point in time, I think we're in a really good stead as it pertains to protecting and respecting the heritage nature of the building. For the chambers and the committee rooms, they will largely go back and look very much the same as they did before, as an example. So what we are trying to do, though, is make sure that as Parliament needs to be modernized, and there are modernizations that need to happen to support the working building, we are doing those in a delicate fashion. So room by room, this board will see those as they come forward as architectural concepts, and you'll get your chance to give us feedback before the design is finalized. But we are taking special care to make sure that those delicate interventions are being done. And I would say just one maybe final thing. One of the most fascinating aspects of the project to date is actually seeing, getting the opportunity to see how the building has evolved with time. And in fact, there is something that we call unsympathetic change in the heritage world. So beautiful heritage features that might have been original, in fact, to the building, but have been covered up with paint or other plaster aspects over time. We've uncovered those, and as we bring those rooms forward, you'll see what we've discovered and how we propose to actually integrate even some original features back to the building. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you very much.
Je vois Monsieur McKinnon, suivi par Monsieur.
Mr. McKinnon, followed by Mr. Julian. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank Mr. D'Entremont not only for his very comprehensive presentation, but for chairing the working group, something he has done like a true master. There's been collaboration. I would also like to note the presence for the first time here of Ms. Garrett, who has just taken up new duties. We want to congratulate her, and Madam Kulba, who's always there, providing us with all the information we need. So I would like to thank them all. This was a monumental project with lots of decisions that had to be taken. I would say we have gotten to a point where many decisions have to be taken fast. So I'll have a comment. I would like to remind all MPs here present, those on the working group and those elsewhere, that late decisions, well, we want to be consulted, we are consulted, but late decisions are very costly. We have to help people move work forward. So I think we all want to get back to center block at the lowest possible cost. So let me remind all my colleagues, they need to continue to make sure that we make those decisions, we respond promptly when approval is sought. On that note, I would like to tell Mr. D'Entremont, as we told the working group, that we do agree with all the measures proposed. We are in agreement with the proposals we have before you today, and we look forward to seeing the final product. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. I don't believe there are any comments to make on that. Mr. Julian, followed by Madame de Bellefeuille.
And thank you very much, Mr. D'Entremont, Madame Garrett, Madame Kulba. I appreciate the presentation and are very supportive of the direction that is being taken. I wanted to come back to Mr. Scheer's comments because I found them very apt on the issue of heritage rooms in the center block. I mean, there are unbelievably incredible rooms within the center block that need to be preserved. And what I hear you saying, Ms. Garrett, is the unsympathetic changes that we've seen over time would be removed. Is it fair to say that what we are looking for is more the type of approach that was taken with the Library of Parliament, which was a magnificent renovation that actually renewed that beautiful building and made it something that is quite distinct and singular in Canadian architecture. Is that the direction that we can expect in terms of these heritage rooms? Something like what we've seen emerge from the Library of Parliament renovation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I can confirm, yes, that is the general intent we'd like to take, and we are taking on this program. Maybe to just give you a bit of a sense of the kinds of things that you might look to see in terms of what I hope would be positive improvements to the heritage fabric of the building. To give you an example, and we saw briefly in your packages photos of the Heritage Committee rooms pre-closure. So at some point in those rooms, there were very large lights that were incorporated into those heritage rooms, probably with great intent. But in looking at them under today's lens, they aren't exactly in alignment with the original heritage intent of the building. So one of the things we're working on with the House of Commons and we'll bring back is what is an appropriate lighting strategy for those heritage rooms. To give another example, in the Prime Minister's office, over time there was a compass rose, a beautiful compass rose that had been covered over when new lighting was put into place in the 80s. In our heritage investigations early on, we uncovered that compass rose, and we would like to reinstate that beautiful sculptural element back. There are many examples where there's beautiful painting schemes that have been painted over and people may not even be aware that they existed original to the building. We're looking at those and considering them and how we might bring that intent back when we bring the rooms back. And all of those things will be fully transparent to the working group and to the board for consideration when we come back with those heritage rooms. Just to give you a sense.
Mr. Julian?
Thank you.
Madame de Bellefeuille, and then Mr. Garrison.
À mon tour, Monsieur le Président, je voudrais...
Mr. Chair, I also like to thank all members of your team. I know that we've had very good meetings. I know that on our side is Mr. Plamondon, the Dean, who attends those meetings, but we always talk before and after committee meetings. Your work is very rigorous, and I also appreciate the fact that you've come to the board because we can discuss with you. You can hear our demands. After seeing the recommendations, I see that the committee has been all ears, and as the leader of the House has proposed, we do endorse all your recommendations today so that work can continue and that it could continue as quickly as possible at the lowest possible cost. Congratulations. I know this takes meetings, this takes planning, this takes coordination. All this is very demanding because we are expecting stringency on your part. So congratulations. I believe that if there's consensus, we can approve all your recommendations. I am liking what I'm hearing. Mr. Garretson.
Perhaps I'll save it for the LTVP committee.
Très bien. Alors, collègues.
Very well. Dear colleagues, following Madame de Bellefeuille's proposal, is there consensus for us to approve the decisions presented to us by Mr. D'Entremont? I see nodding. Very well. Congratulations. Thank you. Now we'll take a break before we go in camera, and there we will resume with questions and discussions in camera.
Pause de cooperation. So we are now at item number 5, the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians. And I will turn the floor over to the president of the Canadian Association of Former Presidents, Matt DeCourcy, who is accompanied by former Manitoba Member of Parliament, Dorothy Doby. Pleasure to see you again.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le Greffier.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mr. Clark, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting us to return before you for the third time with our request from the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians for a budget that would help us better reflect the mandate we have that was given to us as former parliamentarians in 1996.
I'm really pleased today to be joined by my immediate predecessor as president of the Association of Former Parliamentarians, Ms. Dorothy Doby. Dorothy can talk to you a little bit more about her vast experience and time, both as a parliamentarian, but also some of the trajectory of our association in just a moment. But I don't want to take much time. You've heard from myself, my colleague Leo Duguay, numerous times. When we were here in November, we heard clearly from folks that there's broad agreement on the importance of the Association of Former Parliamentarians, that our mandate is vital to the success of this institution and hopefully to the health and well-being of those who have served in office and to the vitality of democracy across the country. We heard your guidance and advice to narrow the focus of the requests that we are making. We come back to you today with a revised proposal that is approximately 40% of our original ask, that focuses on the human resource capacity that we need to undertake the important work of supporting the transition in and out of office and the mental health supports that go along with that of parliamentarians and former parliamentarians, and to continue to build on the important democracy support work that we do in the country. We are here today to answer any outstanding questions that you may still have, and we're hoping that we can leave today with some direction to work with the administration of the House of Commons to finalize our plans for the upcoming fiscal year, so we know what we are working with as we continue to undertake our mandate. Alors, merci pour la chance d'être là.
Thank you for this opportunity for us to be here. I'll give the floor to Dorothy.
And am I on here? Okay. I just wanted to mention, first of all, that you can see that I'm a little bit older than Matt, considerably older than Matt. And that's one of the things. That's one of the things that's adding to the need to make some changes in the way the association is run. It is really important to have older people like me with lots of experience and background, but it's also important to have youth leading our organization, because there's another 30 years to come that will require some experience, and people like Matt are the ones that are going to be leading the way in the future. Since 1993, when the Tories got kicked out so unceremoniously until there were only 2 people left, the Tories have basically been the, I guess, really part of the backbone of the association. I see that into the future for the Liberal members who perhaps that are younger and will be ready to take on that role. And when you're young and you have a young family, as Matt does, you don't have the time to do the things that Leo and I and Andy and fellows like that in the past have had to be able to take on the responsibilities of running the association. The association is very important to the future democracy of Canada. It's really important that we have an opportunity to teach young people about how Parliament works, because they just don't know. I don't know if you've been reading the information recently about that, but even my adult children don't really understand how Parliament works. Some of them they don't know the difference in many cases between the federal government and the provincial government, and then don't ask them about municipal politics, because that's really confusing for them. So what we do as former parliamentarians in terms of letting people understand how this institution works, how parliamentary democracy works worldwide, is a really important function of what we have in mind. But even more important is the way that we can support new members coming into the House of Commons who don't really know what to expect, and then to really support the folks that leave. You don't have to leave involuntarily to go through what I call falling off the cliff. And just very recently, I had a former member who left voluntarily come to me. I thought she wanted to talk about something that had to do with provincial matters. She wanted to talk to me about what was happening to her as a voluntary, very high-profile member of Parliament and how she was being rejected by the community. That's what happens, folks. And it seems really weird, but when I left, I was very lucky to have a former Liberal minister come and ask me for lunch and tell me, Dorothy, it's going to take a decade to get rehabilitated. And I thought she was joking. But I did listen to her, and it really helped me to understand what I was coming up against, because she was someone I had really admired when she was in Parliament. And I discovered she was right. It did take a decade to become accepted into the community and to be able to make a difference. Part of the difference was being asked back to come back and join the Association of Former Members, which was formed about 3 years after I left Parliament. And they just reached out and said, whatever happened to Dorothy Dobie? Well, that was all I needed to be back and saying, well, I'm here, I'm willing to serve, because I think that if you're born into a life of service to the public, it sticks with you, it's in your heart, it stays with you. And so when you finally leave, to be rejected for service is kind of difficult. But to be able to come back and meet with your colleagues who you worked with formerly and have an opportunity to make a difference still is something I think that is just endemic to who we are as parliamentarians. So I am very glad that we've got Matt to run things in the future, to carry on the traditions of the association, but he needs the resources to be able to do the job that we were mandated to do in the very beginning. And you've all heard what those mandates were. They're an act of Parliament. They are very, they're a mandate, I guess is the only thing I can say. And we haven't been able to completely fulfill that mandate. I hope that you will consider our request. We're willing to make compromises, to have discussions, but we really want to make this move this agenda forward and make sure that the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians is here for the future for any of you who might need our help when that day comes.
Merci. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Are there
Thank you.
questions or comments from colleagues around the table? Ms. Sahota.
So thank you for coming here today. And first of all, I want to say thank you for coming back with a more concise ask. And it's been whittled down somewhat as well. Could you explain to me why, how you made these choices and why these specific categories will help you accomplish the work that you're doing, and maybe even reference a little bit as to the work that you do propose to do in the coming years?
Thanks very much. Well, the revised proposal is a consequence of the advice that we received from folks at this table. In the letter that heads that proposal, you'll see that we have every intention to continue the full objectives that we set forth in our original proposal, but we understand as former politicians that there are political realities that this board has to deal with, and we're willing to start by ensuring that we have the human resources in place that can help us fully engage the potential roster of 1,000 former parliamentarians that exist in the mentorship and transition supports that Dorothy spoke about eloquently, and in the outreach to young people, primarily young people across the country, to support democracy building initiatives that we think are so vital at this time in the country. Dorothy referenced an abacus poll that came out just a little over a week ago that talked about the severe dearth in civics education that exists across the country and the consequence that has on Canadians' ability to engage in tough conversations. We're at a point in this country's history where we need people who can engage in tough conversations. And we believe, as experienced former parliamentarians who understand not just the institution, but politics, and the fact that compromise and learning different perspectives is an important part of the practice of politics and of getting things done in this country, that we have something to impart upon young Canadians, and that can be beneficial for the long term of the country. But we need an office staffed with people who can do the work of engaging our membership from coast to coast to coast. So we're looking for an executive level decision maker who can be the leader in the office, who can undertake the umbrella of all of our activities, and also engage in fundraising activities that would complement any public funds to support our organization. We need a full-time administrative support and lead who can ensure that any outreach, any engagement, any back-end supports for the office is fully considered. We need logistics and communications to support to fully fulfill our mandate, and we need someone to lead this mentorship and transition program, which, if I recall, and I've read through Hansard of our last gathering, seemed to garner the most consensus from folks at this table. We're willing to practice the art of compromise right now, should there be any outstanding questions, to at least give us a start in this next fiscal year to launch our broad agenda, which we believe fits squarely into the mandate given to us by unanimous act of Parliament.
Mr. Gerritsen.
Thank you for coming and presenting. I'm just curious how you plan to keep Parliament and or this board informed of your progress. How do you quantify the value for the money?
So I think if given direction from this board to move ahead with this funding proposal, we would be more than willing to work with the administrative team to set up a results framework, and we'd be more than willing to come back and report on our progress at whatever interval this board deemed appropriate, whether it was 6 months, annually, biannually. We feel if given the start, we can demonstrate an increase in engagement in membership, an increased engagement in activities that support mental well-being and of outgoing members, better preparation of ingoing members, and we can help tackle some of those lagging civics education numbers as well. I mean, we've got a whole breadth of activities already set up for this year, and we are stretched thin beyond our means to make good on all of them. But we have regional meetings that will engage our members in Atlantic Canada, au Québec. Nous avons une activité qui va nous...
In Quebec, we have an activity that will give us an opportunity to collaborate with our American counterparts.
Intention to deepen our relationships with the democracy-building organizations like your Civics, like your Samara, like your Democracy Engagement Exchanges, your Apathy is Boring nominee, all of those organizations that are doing their best to fill the apparent need that exists in the country. But we're willing to have a clear results framework set up, and we'll take your direction on that, and we'd be happy to come back and report on where we are whenever asked.
Je vois Monsieur Julien.
Mr. Gillian.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your submission. I have two questions. You speak in your letter about more than 1,000 former members of Parliament. Do you have a sense of what percentage of former members of Parliament are actually active members of the organization, and to what extent this funding might make a difference? And then secondly, what contacts do you have with other groups of national representatives worldwide, parliamentarians from other countries, former members of the U.S. Congress, French National Assembly, UK Parliament? To what extent, how are they organized? To what extent do we see those organizations receiving funding to ensure that there are linkages and former parliamentarians are able to be involved in initiatives and projects?
Thank you very much, Mr. Julian. Today we have approximately 200 of those former members registered as members of the association. That's much less than the membership numbers, which were in the 400 to 450 range prior to COVID. We have had periods of time where we've been able to engage full-time executive director and more resources that have very much contributed to the increase membership numbers in previous years. We think with the staff in the office to engage fully in the outreach, we can double our numbers and increase beyond that 400 range that we've seen previously. Dorothy can speak a little bit more about the relationship with other organizations, but I mentioned briefly within Canada we have great collaborations ongoing with former members of the Ontario Provincial Parliament. Nous avons une activité qui est en chemin d'être.
We are now preparing for an activity with our counterparts in Quebec, probably in May.
With our colleagues in the U.S., we are hoping to send a delegation to their annual general meeting this June in Austin, and we are expecting to invite them to speak to us about the state of democracy in this election year in the U.S. at our annual general meeting in June. Dorothy, you've spent time engaging with our colleagues in the European Union. Perhaps you can speak a little bit more about that collaboration.
Well, I'd like to also add, first of all, when you say we're thinking about sending a delegation to Austin, you need to know that we pay as individuals our own way, but we also carry the cost of taking a staffer with us. We pay them a per diem, and we pay for their travel, and we pay for their accommodation, we pay for their meals. So we're not, these are not junkets, these are serious people taking on serious tasks to further the cause of democracy and also relationships internationally. So yes, we do have a very solid relationship with the European Parliament. They usually send somebody to our annual meeting. We don't always send someone there because it's very expensive, but we usually find a member that will be willing to go at his own cost in most cases. And we do go also, we do have a very strong relationship with the Americans, with the U.S. Former congressmen. And as I think you've heard in the last intervention, both of those organizations are very well supported, a little differently from perhaps the way we would do it, but they do have very substantial support from their governments or through government connections one way or another. And that's very appropriate because you can't, as volunteers, even though we've been doing it for the past, since 1996, how many years is that? It's a long, long time. We really don't have, we just don't have the energy anymore. There's just not the interest in fundraising that there was by people where we actually got our funding. I think you know that one of our members, in fact, a couple of our members, both an NDP member, a Liberal member, and a Tory member, over the 30 years have taken on the responsibility of funding this organization, all three. And so I'm getting off the track, but in the other organizations, they are funded separately, and I think it's time for us to do the same.
I'm going to just cut it off there. Are there any other questions or comments from members? Then seeing none, is there a consensus going forward? Mr. Scheer?
Yeah, just appreciate the presentation, and I appreciate the sincerity with which both of you approach the organization. And as we've heard over the course of a couple different presentations, the interesting work that you do, just given the current climate that we're in, when we're certainly focused on finding areas where we can reduce expenditures or hold the line on expenditures. At this point in time, this isn't something that we can support.
Okay. Madame de Bellefeuille, suivie par Monsieur Garrison.
Followed by Mr. Garrison. I have a question for Mr. de Courcy. A unilingual francophone former parliamentarian, if we are unilingual, is it possible to participate in your services and programs? I'm just curious because I have the feeling that everything happens in English. It's possible to access French language services for francophone former parliamentarians. We have the same issues just as you current parliamentarians have with simultaneous interpretation. We try to have interpretation at each meeting of the council. We want to offer these services during our General Assembly and during our regional meetings. I hope that we'll have those services in June here, but it's the same issue faced by committees here on the parliamentary precinct. Is it available? Do people have access to technologies to ensure that everything is provided safely? So I hope that we'll have an organization with a status that is a member of this entire parliamentary ecosystem, and that we should be able to have access to interpretation services. But right now, we have some members of our board who are former parliamentarians from Quebec. I am from New Brunswick. My first language is English, but I also speak French. So we do the best we can to ensure that all our activities are bilingual, just like Canada.
Very briefly, because I have realized
I
there's
think
some consensus.
I just want to try one thing, and I understand that the Conservatives have no interest in this matter. I think it's unfortunate that we've asked you now to come back, and even the Conservatives last time said, please go away and come back, and you keep doing that, and yet you seem to have been met with a hard no. So, Mr. DeCourcy and Ms. Dobie, I believe during your comments you both indicated that you were willing to make some further concessions, and I see you nodding your head. So I guess my question is to Mr. Scheer, I guess, is the position of the Conservatives absolutely no, or do you want to work with Mr. DeCourcy and Ms. Dobie to find a solution, or are we just at a hard no? Just so I know where we're at in terms of having the discussion.
I think at this point in time, we can, I can take that back to Carrie Lynn. You know, she's not here today. We can have a further conversation. We had a former colleague pass away, actually, Daryl Cramp, so that's where my colleague is today. You know, we know that with the government increasing spending, driving up inflation, and keeping interest rates high, we have to find areas that we can control that spending where we can find them and where we can exert our influence as the opposition. And that's the situation we find ourselves in today. And $600,000 might not mean a lot to my colleague, Mr. Gerritsen, but it's $600,000 more dollars that taxpayers will have to pay, and $600,000 more dollars of additional spending during an inflationary cycle. So that's where we're at in the Conservative Party.
Okay, so I'm not seeing a consensus at this time. I'd like to thank Mr. DeCourcy and Madame Dobie for your presentation and for your work that you put in on this important initiative. Let us move on to item number 6. If I could invite Paul St. George to come up to the table, and his team for, I hope, will be a quick discussion. Colleagues, we have 2 more items. And while they're coming to the table, one of the things which I forgot to do, where are my manners, I'd like to welcome, I'm certain we'd all like to welcome Mona Fortier to the Board of Internal Economy. Welcome aboard, Madame Fortier, and see that you have adapted yourself very quickly to the affairs of this committee. So welcome aboard. Merci beaucoup et bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Thank you very much, Chair. It's a pleasure to share this table with you and with my colleagues here present.
Phone over to Mr. St. George.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I am presenting the unaudited quarterly financial report for the third quarter of 2023-2024. I attest to the accuracy and reliability of the information contained therein. As at December 31st, the House's cumulative net operating cost amounted to $525.2 million. This represents an increase of $41.2 million when compared to the same quarter last year.
The variance over prior year mainly reflects previous submissions approved by the Board as detailed in the enclosed report. And as at December 31st, the House was operating within its approved authorities. demonstrating strong financial stewardship. I welcome any questions the board may have.
Y a-t-il des questions ou des commentaires?
Any questions or comments?
Je vois rien.
Seeing none, is there consensus that this report be adopted? Mr. Chair,
Right, that's fine, yeah.
Est-ce qu'il y a un consensus pour...
is there consensus for this report to be adopted? Yes, there is. Thank you very much.
in keeping within the mandate that was approved by the board for the financial expenditures of the House. Congratulations. Mr. McKinnon, on another issue?
I'm just wondering if, with everyone's indulgence, we could just revert back to item 2. I had a question, a procedural question, if that's okay. So there was the issue, I believe, raised by the Ethics Committee, the Ethics and Access to Information Committee, about travel points and possibly amending the Conflict of Interest Code. I'm just wondering when that might come up for our consideration.
We're currently working on a briefing note for the board members, so it could be as quickly as the next meeting, although I think that meeting was going to largely be on security, but obviously we would follow the direction of the committee in terms of where it should fit in the pecking order of priorities.
I just don't want to lose sight of that. You know.
Mr. Julian.
Juste pour être certain,
I just want to be certain, when is the next meeting planned for? I believe it's the 15th of March. Because I'm wondering, it's an important question.
Here, Mass.
The 21st of March. The security issue is urgent, in my opinion, as well as the issue of the Ethics Committee, the recommendation to change the travel point system. I think it's not a good idea to organize another BOIE meeting in 2 weeks. We have a break week and the week after. I think it's important for us to look into that, because if we don't conclude consideration of these two issues, the next time we meet in Ottawa is going to be in April. So I think we should have the possibility of 2 consecutive meetings in the 2 sitting weeks, in 2 weeks and in 5 weeks. I think that should be the best approach. Thank you very much, Mr. Julian. Is there consensus that we proceed as proposed? If that's the case, we can plan for a meeting during that period. Madame de Belfay, I agree with Mr. McKinnon and Mr. Julian's proposals. I think these are important issues we need to discuss within the board next week when we return from break week on the 21st of March. I think it's reasonable for us to do so. Today's agenda is not completed. We've not dealt with item number 7 on our agenda, and I do not want us to postpone that to April. Mr. Chair, I'm sure that you are looking forward to putting this behind you. So if we were to add another meeting when we return from the break week, during that meeting we could discuss the recommendations made by the Ethics Committee and item number 7, so that we dedicate the meeting of the 21st of March to security issues. That's my proposal. Inaudible for the interpretation.
On that matter, we'll make sure we get back to you. Je ressens un petit différence.
I'm thinking differently, because from what I'm hearing from Mr. Julian, the security issue is urgent. I don't have an issue with that either. Sometimes we are able to go through an agenda very quickly. Sometimes it takes time. I think that if we have 2 hours in 2 weeks, we should be able to discuss security, the issue from the Ethics Committee and item number 7 that we did not discuss today. Maybe I should add that we are working very hard. The security issue will not be ready in 2 weeks, but on the 21st of March, it should be ready. But it will not be ready in 2 weeks. So maybe Madame de Belfay's proposal that we deal with the issue proposed by the Ethics Committee and item number 7 and other items be dealt with, and the other one be kept. We keep the 21st of March for the security issue. Dear colleagues, I know it's already 1 p.m., but if you are interested, you could consider number 7. I would recuse myself, as I had stated, but it all depends on your availability. I know that I made a commitment. Are you saying the next meeting? Well, just to facilitate matters, very well. Mr. Garrettson.
Just on an issue I just did want to raise, and I know I've had discussions with Mr. Obey about it, and I think that the board should give consideration to the matter, which is the fact that more and more members of Parliament are driving electric vehicles and using the facilities on the Hill to charge those. I see 2 issues that I think should be considered and brought forward to the board. One is with respect to the fact that members of Parliament are allowed to use those charging facilities at free of charge, whereas if we were to use them anywhere else, and quite frankly, staff for that matter as well, whereas if we were to use those anywhere else, we would be having to pay for those facilities. So if there should be consideration as to whether or not those facilities should be pay per use. And then the other issue is as it relates to the mileage calculations. I had an interesting scenario a couple summers ago trying to have a discussion with the financial portal folks about how to properly claim mileage when I'm stopping to charge a vehicle as opposed to filling it up with gas. I was not able to get a finite answer, a definitive answer as to how I should proceed, and it was basically just put into my hands of, well, you could do this a couple different ways, but it's really up to you to do it. I think that we're seeing the growth of MPs and staff using electric vehicles. I think that we need to at least give some consideration as to whether or not there should be a different mileage, a different calculation per kilometer based on an electric vehicle. Perhaps the result that comes back is no, what is current is fair, but I think consideration should at least be given to it. So I would ask that at some point in the future we have a report and perhaps a discussion on that topic. Thank you.
Noted, and we will bring that back for a future discussion. Thank you very much, colleagues. Meeting adjourned.